Hello, Reeses and Kit Kats. All right, everybody should have a worksheet that says Tuesday, November 4th. Remember, this does restart today. If you finish the worksheet, it's +5 on your paycheck, but if you don't, it's a lunch intention. So make sure you're completing this worksheet. All right, before we get started, I want everybody to pause this video and write down the 4 order of operations at the top of the page. Today's focus is going to be on order of operations with substitution. So substituting into a problem and then simplifying using order of operations. So let's take a look at number 1. This, we don't have substitution yet. We're going to build up to that. So I'm going to go through my checklist on the side and solve this using order of operations. So write your little checklist on the side, PEMDAS, and then let's go through and solve it. So first, I have parentheses, so I need to solve that first. So inside the parentheses, I need to simplify 4 plus 2. So 4 plus 2 is 6. Now I'm going to rewrite that, keep my parentheses, remember that's very important, and then rewrite everything else in the equation. So then it's 6 squared times 2 minus 6. Now I'm going to go to exponents, and I see that I have one exponent, and that exponent is the 6 squared. So next, I'm going to simplify that. 6 squared, I'm going to write on the side. 6 squared equals 6 times 6, which equals 36. So I'm going to put in 36 for my 6 squared times 2 and rewrite everything exactly the same. Now, I'm done with parentheses, I'm done with exponents, so I'm going to do multiplication and division. Remember, when we do multiplication and division, we go from the left to the right, the same way you read a book. So I see that I have only one example of multiplication, so I'm going to do that first. 36 times 2 is 72, and then rewrite the rest of the expression. Lastly, now that I'm done with multiplication and division, I'm going to do addition and subtraction. So I just have one example of subtraction, and that's 72 minus 6, which is 66. So the answer is 66. Okay, pause the video, copy this down. I want to move through this quickly so that I can get to 2 more. Okay, the next problem. Oops, I accidentally erased my order of operations, so I'll just put a P for parentheses. The next problem is 5x plus 4y plus 1. And I know that x equals 2 and y equals 3. So, before you even get to doing order of operations, you need to substitute. So this is the very first important step. Substitute. So I know that x equals 2 and y equals 3. I'll write that up here so I remember. X equals 2, y equals 3. I remember when I substitute a value in for a variable, I have to put parentheses around that value. So I'm going to do 5. I'm just going to substitute for x first. So 5 times 2, because x equals 2. And then I'll substitute for y with my parentheses, because we had 4 times y. Now it's 4 times 3, because y equals 3. And then I'll add 1. Okay, now that I've substituted, now I go through my steps of order of operations. So I look, I have parentheses, but these parentheses right now just mean multiplication. So I'm okay with parentheses because everything inside them is just a number. So we move on. Exponents. I don't see any exponents here, right? So number 3, I'll check them off. Multiplication and division. I do have multiplication, and I have 2 examples of multiplication. So I'm going to start on the left and make my way to the right. So first, 5 times 2 is 10. But I'm not done with multiplication. I have a second multiplication step as well. So next I'm going to rewrite everything and just substitute for that. So now I have 10 plus 12 plus 1, because 4 times 3 equals 12. Remember, if you have a number outside of the parentheses, it means multiplication. Last but not least, I'm going to do addition and subtraction from left to right. So 10 plus 12 is 22. Rewrite the rest of the expression. 22 plus 1 is 23. So my final answer is 23. Okay, again, if you need to pause the video to get all this down, you can, but I'm going to go through number 3 because number 3 is really tricky. Okay, so for number 3, I have x squared plus x if x equals 2. So I just told you that the most important rule to remember is that you have to put parentheses around the number when you substitute. In this case, I'm not going to. And the only reason I'm not going to is because I see that if I put a number in with parentheses, I'm going to have double parentheses, which will get really confusing. So I'm just going to look and say, okay, it doesn't matter if you have parentheses with an exponent, and this parentheses won't matter right here, so I'm fine. I'm not going to do it. It would be the exact same thing if you did do it. It would just look a little bit more complicated. So now I'm going to substitute. X equals 2, so I'm going to put 2 where x used to be. But I see x again. That just means I put another 2. So instead of x squared plus x inside the parentheses, I now have 2 squared plus 2. Okay, this is where it gets tricky. So now I need to solve this using the order of operations. The first step is always parentheses. So I'm going to look, I need to simplify what's in the parentheses. But before I can do that, I look inside the parentheses, and I see even inside of those parentheses, I still have exponents. So even with this expression inside the parentheses, you still need to use order of operations. So inside of the parentheses, I still need to do a mini order of operations where I go, where I do the rest of the operation. So E, M, D, and A, and S. So I'm going to start with my exponents right here. So I'm going to rewrite everything around the parentheses. And I'm just going to solve one step at a time in the parentheses. So 2 squared becomes 4. And I'll rewrite the plus 2. So I'm just doing exponents because I still need to follow this order inside the parentheses. Now that I've done exponents, I can go down to multiplication and division. I don't see any inside the parentheses. We're just looking in here, remember? And so then I go to addition and subtraction, and I'll add those two together. So then, rewrite my parentheses. This will become 6. Outside the parentheses, I have a 5. So 5 times 6 is 30, and that will be my final answer. All right, so the trickiest part with this is remembering how to solve once you've substituted. Okay, go ahead. I know this was a bit of a long video, but I wanted to help you out with it. Finish the rest of this worksheet. There are a few answers posted online, and then go ahead and do plotting the coordinates on the back as well. Remember, finish your sheet and it's +5, but if you don't, it's a lunch detention. Good luck.